Terri, thank you so much for joining us today and talking to us on Alberta Impact about the Edmonton Public School Board and this really exciting, time right now for you guys launching these 7 new schools that are here in the city.
It is.
Yeah, so thank you. So maybe just give me a little bit of a background on yourself, what your title is, and just kind of what it is that you guys you do.
Yeah, so Terri Gosine with Integrated Infrastructure Services, so part of a bigger infrastructure department with Edmonton Public Schools. So my department is responsible for the design, construction, and maintenance of all of our school buildings, whether they're new or existing. But yeah, one of my luckiest things is that I get to build and design new schools.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We've had an awesome opportunity to actually go through a lot of these new schools in the last little while and take a tour and just see some of the incredible things that are happening right from the the little ones from K to 6 and all the way up to the high schools, and really awesome in the tech end of things. Utilizing renewable energy, with the solar panels, and then just the overall design and layout. In some cases pertaining to who the school was named after, and but a big thing with just the open concept, the lighting, like it's lots of windows, like it's a very warm, welcoming space, which I'm sure kids are going to love going back to from being cooped up over the last couple of years.
I hope so.
Exactly right. So maybe just maybe take me through. Okay, IPD is a term that we talked about off camera. I'm not going to take credit for knowing what that term is because I just learned it. So maybe tell me about IPD and the process that you guys go through to design and build these schools.
I will. So all of these 7 schools and Mill Creek, which opened a couple of years ago, have all been done using IPD, which stands for Integrated Project Delivery. Okay. So when you think about construction in a traditional sense, we would go out, hire an architect, you design the building, then we tender it out, and the lowest bidder gets to build the building. Don't love that process. There's a lot of conflict, a lot of change orders, a lot of things that maybe you don't end up with the best building in the end. So we decided to try IPD, which is a very different methodology around construction. So what you do is right at the beginning, you hire everybody that you're going to need, and everybody basically joins together to create, kind of like a mini business, and you agree to collaborate. And the partners, as we would call them, they take their profit and they put it to the side, and you build the building for the money that remains. Okay. If you are successful, you get the profit. If you aren't successful, you lose the profit.
Oh, wow.
So the idea is that every single person on the team is invested in the end result.
Right.
Trying to get the most you can for every single dollar, be efficient in how you build so that you can make sure that you earn your profit, but also provide the best school you can provide.
Wow.
So it's a really unique way of building. It's not super popular across the world yet, but it's getting there. So it started with some lean technologies and kind of lean construction and how to be efficient, and then it's just kind of built out of that.
Is it difficult to find people that are willing to step forward into that position?
When we started, yes.
Yeah.
There were not a lot of people or companies in the province that had a lot of experience. I think we did the second full IPD project in the province that was related to institutional for sure. Red Deer did build 2 schools actually under IPD just before we started.
Wow.
But, what we didn't look for people with experience in IPD. We looked for people who were willing and interested in collaborating and looking at things in a different way. And we were able to find a lot of people interested in that, and we've been able to kind of build the IPD world a little bit in Edmonton and Alberta over the past 5 or 6 years.
That's super interesting.
It's
what a great
amazing.
initiative too, and keeping everybody on the same page and I guess you could say honest as well to the final product. That's really interesting. That's really unique.
Yeah.
How about the design and how does those decisions get to be made? And then we'll maybe add on to the design, but also the implementation of technology. Everything from smart boards to LED walls in the gyms. These schools have streaming and broadcast labs now.
They do.
Maybe just talk a little bit to some of that stuff that we've been seeing.
Sure, I can probably talk for hours about this.
I can only imagine. Right?
Yeah, so when we first start looking at what we want to build, so I mean the province of Alberta funds us and gives us a program that we have to meet. So we know how many classrooms we want to build. We kind of know the area that we're allowed to build. We have all of that kind of prescribed to us. So then it's just how do you put them together and what's the best way you can do that. So one of the things about IPD is everybody's sitting at the table and everybody's equal. So typically the owner kind of tells everybody what to do. Right. In this case, the owner gets a couple of extra votes, but not enough to outvote the team.
Okay.
So everybody's sitting there, even trades, right from day one.
Wow.
So very interesting to have the person who's actually going to physically build the building sitting at the table while you're designing it. So they understand the why. Why did we put this way? Why did we make this decision? Why did we do this sort of thing? They fully understand it and in fact have usually participated in it. I've learned so much from the tradespeople in terms of perspective of schools. Like we had a couple of electricians sitting at a table right when we were starting Thelma Chalafu and Soraya Hafez, and them talking about don't ever have dark spaces in a school because it's where kids get into trouble and it's where they got into trouble when they were kids. And I just remember hearing that and thinking like, wow, yeah, we do have a lot of schools that have places where we haven't thought about that. So just that unique perspective from the people who are actually going to put it together in the end is just amazing.
Wow.
When we started these schools right back to Mill Creek, which opened a few years ago, we started talking about a different way of stacking the school. So everyone, all of us, when we went to schools, you have classrooms down a corridor, right? And they're all lined up next to each other. Not necessarily ideal for the way that kids learn and the way that we expect kids to behave now. So kids are expected to be collaborative and to work in a variety of ways because that's how the real world is, right? We aren't all working by ourselves sitting at a desk anymore. We're working in collaboration. When you look at Google, for example, like look at the way they work.
They don't have concept.
They don't even have an office, right? They come in, they sit where it works best for what they're doing that day. And we expect kids to behave like that as well. So the building needs to conform to this new way that we're working and we're living and kids are learning. So we started to talk about, okay, well, what do kids need? And they need flexibility. And that is the most important thing. So we wanted our buildings to be built to change as the times change. So our schools are now built more around communities than they are individual classrooms. So when you look at our schools, you'll kind of see a grouping of classrooms in, a square or a circle kind of thing. And within that community, as we would call them, kids have absolutely everything they would need. So they have their classrooms, they have space where they can either, work alone, all the way to spaces where you've got garage doors that will open up and you can have 4 classrooms learning together at once.
I love that look too. Like that garage door look looks
and it's so easy
cool
to create a space that becomes flexible. You can have a classroom that's just 25 or 30 kids to a classroom that's 80 kids in a matter of seconds. You just press the button and it opens up and you can change what you're doing. Within that community, you'd also find washrooms specific to those kids. The teachers would have a collaboration space that is their own, that has their own washroom in it and some storage. You'll find all the kids' storage spaces, so lockers as they get older or coat hooks when they're younger. All of that is within that community. So to create, one of the other things that we wanted to create was a place where kids felt like they belonged and they were welcome always. And so we felt like if they feel like they're comfortable and at home, then they're going to feel comfortable and safe in the school. And that's really important.
Easier to learn when you're comfortable.
It is. It is.
You're not distracted by other. The one thing also I noticed was all of your library bookshelves, like the curved ones, all on wheels. So you can move them anywhere.
They can go to the kids. And that's, the library shouldn't be a destination anymore, right? It's not you line up and you go to the library and you pick out your book and you go home. The library should come to you and it should support your learning no matter what you're doing. So our libraries are all on wheels so that they can move to this, if we have a teacher who's going to be teaching something very specific, a theme, the library can support that and bring those kinds of books that then could engage kids even further in that theme. So
I love also in I think almost all the schools I've seen now the massive almost like theater style staircase that goes up with seating area like it's like your traditional you go back to the Greek times and you'd see those big cathedrals with these giant steps that people would sit on, or you go even to look at universities in some of the places in the United States where they've got these massive steps going up to the university, but it doubles up as a engagement space. You could have like a theater on the floor or a group on the floor working and a whole lineup of kids up these steps. I love that.
Exactly. Yeah, we love them too. We actually did a lot of research before we started designing some of these schools, and we went to the States even to see some schools that were a little bit ahead of us in terms of thinking around community.
Right.
And yeah, those stairs were everywhere, and they're fantastic. The kids love them. The teachers love it because you could have a presentation. You can use it for presentation. You can use it for just kids hanging out, right?
Yeah.
So we love it in the high school because there's no cafeteria in the new high school. So where do kids go to eat? Well, here's a great space where they can go, and you can either just let them lounge or you can actually have a presentation going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having it being multifaceted, like you were saying earlier, even with the garage doors and stuff like that, just maximizes the potential.
It does.
And adapt, and then kids will start coming out with ideas, and then they can still use that space to do different presentations, do different kind of activities and things like that. So that's really cool.
Exactly.
Let's get into technology. I'm sure you're getting excited for that.
Well,
okay.
I'm a building person.
But still, okay, so speaking to the building, let's talk about the technology of the building itself. Starting to implement solar.
Yes.
And I mean, walking into that school and seeing the front TV in that school giving you all the readouts of what, and I've even heard rumor that in some cases those schools are putting back into the grid.
They are, yeah.
So let's fill me in on that. How does that get brought forward? And then how do you make that partner the right partner? I mean, there's so many players in that. You have to work with the city, you got to work with the energy company. If you're going to be putting back into it, then you got to work with the provider. Take me through that.
Yeah, we're very lucky. All of the schools that are opening right now all have solar on them.
Yeah.
And we're even adding it to some of our other schools in an effort to try to, just teach our kids a little bit about it. And so all of it was always a partner right at the IPD table. So they were sitting there right from day one. So that it helps because then you can talk about, well, how should, which way should the building face? How do we want to actually site the building so that it makes the most sense to make use of the solar to the most that we possibly can. We were very lucky to be funded with solar grants that came along with the funding for the school. So we were allowed to do this extra solar work outside of just the building construction budget that we received. And so they all have it. Some of them have it just on the roof. Some have it even on the wall, so you can see them that way. And then the most important part for us was tying it to the kids. And so, yes, they all have a display board inside the school that talks, that kind of shows what they're doing and how they're doing it. And we're working on building that a little bit more so that all the schools across the division could see each other's schools. And we could maybe even get like some competitions going and that kind of thing.
Cool.
Right? Like who's the most energy friendly.
Yeah.
And so we have been putting back into the grid. I mean, they haven't been around for very long, these schools as yet, but for sure over the summer, right? We're not in there.
Makes sense,
And that's when we probably earn a lot of solar,
right?
Versus when the kids are in the building.
That is, and again, teaching early and showing by example, right? Like, hey, this is what we can do. Let's do it, right? So that's really cool. So another really cool concept that I loved, which was I've seen in the one, and from what I understand, it's the first of its kind, at least in Alberta, which is and you've said community a couple times. So, and this exemplifies that in more ways than one. But the school that is basically has use by the public as well with the gymnasium. And I'm not sure about any of the other areas of the school, but more specifically the rec and gymnasium area. This is a new concept. Tell me about this and how that came to be into fruition.
So, we were very lucky. So Dr. Ann Anderson School, when it was announced, the city actually approached us. So there's no rec center down there. And it's not on a list for the near future. So that community doesn't have the benefit of a space where they can, exercise, work out, use a gym. So they approached us and asked if we would be willing to add space to our building to support a community facility. So we did. So the city gave us $5 million, and that funded an additional gym. So at Dr. Ann Anderson, we have a really large gym that can be divided into about 6. And then we have an additional gym that we call the community gym. And so that was funded by the city, but it is all part of our building and all maintained by us. And it ended up being able to fund a track that runs around the entire, all of the gyms, which we don't, that's our first track. We don't have that in any other high school. So the city uses that space after hours and when possible during the day if our kids aren't using it. So we get to use it first for our kids to support their programming, and then after hours they use that space and then can come into the other gym if we're not using it as well.
Right, right.
They can also use the fitness center that is right between the two gyms, the track, of course,
Yeah.
and then other spaces as, they'll work with the school around, using classrooms if they want to, teach something that way. Off of the gym is also like a little classroom where they can teach yoga,
Yeah, I saw that.
that kind
Yeah.
of thing. And there's even a little rooftop patio, as we would call it, just up there that, we've talked about doing yoga up there, but they haven't been open yet for summer. So I'm hoping they'll still do
well,
yoga
now
up
that the
there.
sun started to peak, I'm sure it'll happen soon.
I hope so.
Yeah. Talk about getting the maximum bang for your buck and also getting a real buy-in from the community because they're going to come and use that school.
They are.
And maximizing where the school is quiet and using it for that community is, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Like,
I think it's
really
always
cool.
been our dream that schools are community hubs. They're the place that, kind of ties that community together. So this just helps that.
Right. Yeah. And the design of that school, like walking into that front entranceway and you've got that giant, it kind of emulates a teepee. I don't know if that was the intent or not. But even just the timbers in there and the way that looks and how it spiders across that ceiling. What a beautiful design. Like if anybody just take the drive up there and go and see that school. It's that facility is beautiful.
It is. It's
really well
I'm
done.
very proud of that school. It's stunning. I adore that school, and the whole team is very proud of that. We actually won an award from the Lean the Construction Institute.
Okay.
For the process that we went through Lean and how lean we were in designing that building, and that allowed us to do a lot of things that maybe we wouldn't have been able to do in a traditional type of building.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it is a beautiful building. It was, when we were designing that building, we spent a lot of time talking to kids who were in high school around really what would make you feel safer, what would make you feel more comfortable in a school. And they all went to the universities. We want it to look like university, we want to feel like university, we want to feel more grown up.
Right.
So that was our intent, was to try to make it look a little bit more post-secondary, which I think it achieved.
Yeah.
The kids seemed to love it.
Yeah. Well, those giant tall ceilings, and again, all the windows, if you go down to Grant MacEwan, especially some of the newer buildings at Grant MacEwan, that's that design.
Yes.
Boatloads of windows and just natural light, and they can get their vitamin D and stay focused.
They can. I mean, we used to build schools where you don't put windows anywhere.
Right.
I mean, I went to Harry Ainley. There's not a window. Hardly a window in there.
Yeah.
And it's such a different philosophy. Is now we want kids to be able to see daylight or connect with outside pretty much from anywhere in the building. That's one of our goals.
So that's such a good boost for mental health too.
It is.
The world's gotten more complicated in the last little while. That mental health is so important, and being connected with nature is one way to combat that tooth and nails. So
it is.
Yeah. Now about some other things. Is there anything I'm missing? I mean, I've gotten one of the AV look, and I've got to see these giant LED walls. I mean, they're streaming now. Like they can stream their basketball games, volleyball games to different schools. Really cool stuff. They've got the broadcast rooms now. What are some of the other things maybe I'm missing that I haven't got a chance to gander at?
Oh, geez. You know what? I think it's just now we're way more thoughtful with the design of a building. So Alita Patterson, for example, is it's a school that's just for little kids, right? It's just K to 3 or K to 4, and getting to design a school where you're trying to actually look at everything from like a really from a kid's perspective. All the windows are lower, and just actually thinking about how you design a school from the perspective of a child is really neat, and it's really fun to be able to work in that, and then to go right to a high school, where we tried to look at it from their point of view and what does that look like. These schools have been just so incredibly rewarding on every level. What we were able to accomplish in the building and to give to students, plus to be able to change how we built it and to build relationships with contractors and architects that are so strong, because everybody was actually, for facing the same direction and aiming for those same end goals.
So much easier when everyone's pulling in the right direction.
It's incredible the
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
I don't want to ever build anything that's not that way now.
Who
Yeah.
would, right?
Yeah.
One, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. It's over. I'm just trying to think of the school's name though. Old to new integration.
Oh, Highlands.
Highlands.
Yes.
That one is really neat too. From adding on the new portion to the school, but keeping that old and having that giant concrete staircase with the huge side pillars
Yes.
inside the school. That is such a cool look and such a really unique idea. How does the process on that, because you're integrating new to olds?
That was a very long process, and I can't
Yeah, I
even
bet.
remember when it started, because not only is it integrating new and old in the building, it's actually taking 3 schools and bringing them into one. So we closed 2 other schools in that
Gotcha.
community and brought the elementary kids into, because Highlands used to just be a junior high, so now it's a K to 9.
Right.
So there was a very long process. We wanted to walk with the community and get them to understand what we were, what our goal was here, and that was to give the students of this, really, it's a very old community. It's a beautiful community. We wanted to give them a bit of a more vibrant school and building. And what we heard from the community was how important that 1912 building was. So we knew we weren't touching that building, and it is stunning. I mean, we all love it.
Well, that nostalgia, like just that
Yeah.
it's real piece of history.
It is. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
So, and then trying to design how to connect a new building to it without taking away from the architecture that we had, right? Because that building stands very well on its own, but there was an annex on it. It was not beautiful.
Right.
It's just a big concrete thing. And so we needed to try to figure that out. We had a fantastic architect who tried to emulate some of the pieces of that old building and kind of bring it across to the new.
Cool.
The structure of that old building is really interesting, because it's kind of like a bi-level in a house where, you don't walk in right off the ground. So then, but our new building, we couldn't go down like that. So they're actually offset from each other. So we have an elevator that stops like every half a floor, it feels like. And the structure was, the buildings aren't actually physically connected, other than they look like they are. But the structure of the new building is self-supporting, because we couldn't use the structure of the 1912 building. It's too old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was really, and we ended up the switchbacks between the ramp, so that we could make sure that a student in a wheelchair could access both floors or all of the floors. So we've got these switchbacks that created. We were able to create like an art walk, because that ramp was so big to get to all those different levels.
Wow.
Yeah, so there was a lot of thought that went into that building.
Yeah. Well, I think there was a lot of thought going into all of these buildings, because, like I said, like I'm normally like not super like attentive to that kind of stuff, but when you walked into these, it was hard to not be like, whoa, this is really different. Like this is next level. Like I couldn't help but be, I wish this stuff was in my school. When I was
Me
going
too.
to school. Like, I'll go back to school if you want me to.
Me
if this
too.
is the direction it's going in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
right on. Well, Terri, thank you so much for coming in and telling us about all these stuff. These are really cool initiatives. Well, not just initiatives, they're reality now. And carrying forward, it's going to be amazing to see, where this goes. And you and I had a little brief conversation off camera, but talking about this stuff was all designed and done pre-COVID. And now there's all these new ideas, and the technology has moved forward, and the way of designing things, infrastructure has moved forward in different directions to accommodate for that change that we just went through in the last couple of years. So to see what the next level is going to be, wow.
I can't wait.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Anytime.